Okay, welcome everybody to the Google Classroom Crash Course Part 2, Your Questions Answered. It's a bit of a mouthful. Thanks for coming along. We're about to kick off. Hopefully many, if not all of you, have viewed or attended the Course 1 version of this one, which was the How to Deliver Online Learning with Google Classroom. That was also run by Andrew. And really, this second one is happening because of the feedback that we got from that first one. We had about 25 people live in that first one. We had a great session. Ended up now with over 1,000 enrollments in that course, which has been fantastic and really lovely feedback, which has been, a really nice thing to be a part of. Without any further delay, we're going to run for about an hour. I'm going to hand over to Andrew. Andrew, you've heard his intro before, but basically he's a bit of a guru Google Classroom teacher. And as you saw how well in the previous one he was able to demonstrate so much value, he's going to respond to some of the questions that came through and give us a second session. So over to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Miles. Thanks everyone for joining in today as well. It's good to be back. I think it's been a short turnaround since the last course, but the feedback was really, really positive. And I think that the shift to online learning, which we started to see happen right about the same time that course was first was run, the webinar was recorded. It's just been a crazy, hectic week. So I'd imagine that this particular course, probably for those of you who've started with Google Classroom in that the interim in those 2 weeks, probably have pages that look like this one here. So you're probably, with the 2 weeks of learning so far, you've got a Google Classroom page that looks a little bit like this. I've set up a virtual classroom here. This isn't a class full of any students that are actual students. I've set it up today. You can see the names, they're quite ridiculous. One part of the feedback from the last course was that we probably needed to show something that looked like more of a complete Google Classroom. So I could show what marking would be like, so I could show what the gradebook page would be like, and I could actually demonstrate some features rather than hypothetically. I could show what it actually looked like in practice. Okay, so I was busy at work today setting this up. It's called A Geography Online Learning. You can see on the Classwork tab as well that it's got a bunch of different assignments here, number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. This is a material, because you can see from the icon there is a material. This is an assignment with the clipboard little icon, so is this one. This one here is a question. And lastly, we've got the big assignment as well. Okay, so a brief overview you would have seen from the description. What we're going to be looking at today is how to set up a grading system. I'm going to go through what I do for my classes with the grading system. I'm going to show the difference between using rubrics or just going through regular numeric grading. We're going to go through looking at how to create rubrics from scratch, how you can reuse rubrics, and then finally some guardian summaries, communications with parents, which is probably going to be pretty important for the next term especially. Okay, so again, this is the teacher page here. I've got the teacher icon up in the corner. What I've done is I've set up each of these tabs up here is the student view of Google Classroom. So this was Steve's view here. It looks the same as everyone else's, except the work is just for Steve here. This is Jeff, Lucy, Samantha, Gary, and Sally. Okay.
Cool.
Now, what we have on the page here, I want to demonstrate the first thing is with regular numeric grading. So I've issued the first assignment here today for the physical environment, and it was an assignment that required them to go through a Google Doc that looked like this. Okay, it's just a regular closed passage. Most of the world's great blank ranges are the results of blank, between, and so on. So the students could be using this word bank down the bottom. They could cut a word out of there and they could paste it in and so on. Anyway, so the students have gone through that. Assuming that's all done, I'm not here to show you the geography work. I'm here to show you what the marking would look like. You can see over here that I made this worth 5 points. Okay. Now the student work tab, we can see here that for Gary, he did quite well with this. He turned it in, and I'm going to give him a 4. Okay. Lucy also did quite well. She got a 4 out of 5. Sally, she's turned it in too. She missed a few of the words. She got a 3. Samantha got a 2, and Steve got a 5. Okay, that's basic numeric grading, and you could award as many points as you like. You could make this up to 100 points, and you'd have to redo the grading. Okay, let's give that a moment for it to update.
Quick question, Andrew, just come in
Yes.
while you're chatting. So
Yep.
how did you get that student view?
I logged in as a student, so I had to create actual accounts today. So that was probably the most time-consuming part. But for demonstration purposes, yeah, I had to go through the setup of creating accounts. I can't actually view the student view unless you've got their logins. So these are all just dummy accounts.
Could you create a dummy student view if you just wanted to view it as a student?
It depends. If you work in the Department of Education, no, because you can't create email addresses that end in @education. Depending on the school system you work within, or if you run a Google Classroom that's not official, i.e. you're not using a school account to do it and you're just using a regular Gmail, then yes, you can. You could enroll yourself in the classroom as a student as well. Okay, so let's just go back to the teacher page here. We're having a look here. See that I changed the points to 100. You can make it anything between 1 and 100, or you can just leave it as unmarked. Now, a slight difference between this is a Gmail Google Classroom compared to the G Suite one that the Department of Education teachers use. It'll say unmarked, but it's called ungraded as well. Okay, sometimes the wording is slightly different between the two, but it means the exact same thing. Now, what we see on the screen here as well is something that's happening recently, that it's freezing when you edit an assignment. So I'm just going to refresh the page really quickly. And I'll see if the points value is updated. The one thing you'll notice as well, once this refreshes, is you see that it's saved all the grades that I put in there. That should load in a moment with the grade. Okay, the Google Classroom's not helping me out today.
Just while you're waiting for that to load, Andrew,
Yep.
Someone's asked, when they create a quiz on Google Classroom, how do they submit it? It's saving in my Google Drive.
Okay, if you're creating a Google quiz assignment, I'll head back to the teacher page for the moment to show this. If you go through the process and you're working in the Department of Education, you have access to create quiz assignments. And once the students complete this quiz, which is automatically created when you do a quiz assignment, when they press submit on that quiz, that'll automatically turn in the assignment. So the grading will still happen in the Google form, but when they press submit at the end of the quiz, it'll turn in that assignment, the quiz assignment on Classroom. Okay, going back to the grading of that particular one though. So we said that we've got 5 students who've handed in, sorry about that. Okay, so the grades are all saved there. And what I can do now is I can say, I'm gonna check the box for all those that have been turned in, and I'm just gonna return those grades to those students. Okay, I might give some feedback that's general here. If this wasn't, say, a quiz with 5 questions, I could say something like, if you got 5 marks, outstanding use of terms and concepts, give some general feedback, save yourself some time. You go 4 marks, some terms and concepts missed, but mostly all there, and so on. You could give that quite general feedback so that you know that Gary, Sally, Samantha, Steve, and Lucy are all going to get that feedback. So if I jump back to their page now, we can see if I go to Steve's tab, and I'll say, go to the Classwork page where that work was submitted. Okay, it was this particular assignment here, and we're going to go to View Assignments. It says graded. We can see over here it says graded. Got 5 out of 5, and the general comment that came through to all the students is listed over in private comment section over here, which says 5 marks. If you got 5, you did this very well. If you got 4, you did this very well, and so on. Okay, all the students who'd submitted that particular task would be getting the same message as well. So just to prove that that's the case, we can go through to, actually, looks like Jeff didn't submit it. Let's check Lucy's page. Again, the introduction from Google Classroom there. Okay, we've got the assignment here from Lucy, and it says that she was graded 4 out of 5, just little text there. And we've got the comment that was posted there too. Okay. So that's the way we can set up some numeric grading very basically in Classroom, and you're probably already all doing that to start off with anyway.
Question from Paul.
Yes.
Can the quiz be set up with a time limit?
It can, but I believe probably with a little bit of trickery, I'll answer that question by showing what I'd do to create a time limit. There is an add-on that you can use where it's called Form Limiter. It is rather complicated, so I'm going to make this a quiz. I think it was assignment number 6. Let's go with quiz. I would recommend, if you want to do time limits for your quizzes, let's just say we've got I'm going to do this quite quickly, just to show you what a basic one would look like. Add all. These are all question 1. I'm not going to change those for now. Okay, that's a live quiz, and we can test that it's a live quiz by what we see there. Again, I'm not going to change question 1 to question 2. That's going to take a bit of time. I would say, rather than putting a time limit on, if you're building the form, go to the responses tab. You can see questions is on the left, responses on the right. Turn off accepting responses. Okay. What we'll see now is if we had this quiz loaded again, no one can take the quiz. So
cool.
The only way that you can turn that on is by doing it manually. If you wanted to look into something that's a bit more automatic, that say the quiz opens at 9 a.m. every morning, for instance, could be roll marking. These first 2 weeks I was using a Google form to do my roll marking. I was manually going in every morning and opening this up for the first hour and then closing it. You could do that with form limit up, but that would take some time that this tutorial doesn't have, unfortunately. Okay, so that's the quiz assignment. We'll return to that later. I'm going to close that down for the moment. Okay, so we've got numeric grading there. Of course, the grades that we give can also be just simply ungraded, and the feedback that you're going to be giving would just be in the private comments. So if I went into this assignment, we've got 3 students who have turned this in. I'm going to change it to being unmarked, and hopefully it doesn't freeze there for us again. Okay. Jeff had turned this in. I've had a look at, actually, let's have a look at Samantha's. She added a few comments to her document so far. Let's have a quick look. Okay. If any luck, we should see the comments come through. But if that's not happening for the time being, if we're going to keep ungraded assignments, we could just give our feedback verbally, in the written comments for private comments here. So the processes leading to the formation of tsunamis was well explained. Okay, and we can post that just in the feedback that way and return it ungraded. Okay, now that was the teacher window for this particular assignment. I'm just going to close that. I'm going to go back to the student window and look at Samantha's work, Classwork tab, and that was assignment number 3. And we can see if she clicks on view assignment, that the feedback should appear here in a moment, just here. So there is no grade. There's no grade about it being out of 5 or anything like that. It's just the written feedback, which is timely, delivered straight away in real time. Okay, there's a third way of doing things, and this is the way that I use in my classrooms, and I've been doing it for this entire term and the very end of last term, where I sort of had a little pilot project of my own. Not actually my idea for doing a grading system. It was someone called Alice Keeler, who I suggest if you're looking into Google Classroom and Google, you check out. She's got free stuff online. A bit of a wizard, but the problem I was finding was Google Classroom. I was doing all this work giving really detailed, what I thought was great feedback, but you can't get the students to look at it, or you can't get the students to act on it. So what I did was I borrowed this idea from Alice Keeler, where you create a grading system and everything that you issue is worth 5 marks. So it's a combination of numeric and non-numeric grading, because the marks themselves are meant to indicate what the students have done well and what they need to act on. So the idea was this, that if it's worth 5 marks, they've done superbly. If it's 4, they've done everything they need to do. 3, it's going to be, there's some feedback given about how you could improve it, but you don't need to act on it. If it's a 2, the students are given actionable feedback. So they're meant to check the feedback, change the work, and it can be regraded. 1 means it would be incomplete, or it's just totally missed the point. And 0 was no attempt. Now,
okay. What's the spelling of Keeler?
K-E-E-L-E-R. And I can put that in the frequently asked questions to follow as well.
Okay. And Andrew, what I'm just going to mention, we've got a few questions coming through, but I know you've got a lot to get through as well. So
yep, that's okay.
Do you want to take a couple now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Good time?
Yep.
Okay, so Simone has asked, if you want to include an audio question, do you have to add it as a separate attachment?
I believe so. I don't know if I have any audio examples here. I've never actually used it myself, but I actually had a learning support teacher ask me that today. Say, can I add and upload a file which is an audio file? So let's go ahead and give that a go. Let's say there could be a question. Is there a question that we have as a sample? Anyone like to throw one out? How would you use an audio example? Is there anyone there, Miles? Or
no, but
no. Okay. Sure. Okay. Let's just.
Someone said you can upload it as an attachment.
You can. So I was just trying to think what question I could ask from it. But if I had a file upload, and if you had an audio file on your computer,
maybe it's a music question.
Yep. Okay.
How would you categorize this style of music?
Okay, I'm just trying to find maybe a bit of Coldplay in there. Okay, very good.
We got all the copyright for that sorted out, don't worry.
I'm not going to play it, don't worry. So look, you'd have the audio file playing there, and you can say, what number track was this, the album? Not really geography, but that's okay. I'm going to add it to my Google Classroom just to mix it up a little bit. If you've heard the song, it's a great song. I suggest you go and listen to it. Again, I rushed that. I didn't put the topic in, and I didn't put it out of 5. Cool. I put a due date as well. And lastly, put the topic, landscapes and landforms. Why not?
Okay.
Okay, so audio files, yes.
Quick file questions. So
yeah, sure.
Angela's asked, if I write a private comment but don't hit return, do the students see it?
No, they don't. You need to press return. And the thing you'll notice is as well that you can actually edit private comments, which is useful, I suppose, but remember that every private comment that you send only gets sent if you hit return. Oh, sorry, do you mean return on the classwork? Okay, I thought you meant post. Okay, I'm going to go into the work here just to demonstrate what that would look like. They'll get the private comments instantly, but they will not get the grade until you hit return. So the private comment, as soon as you press post, is going to go straight through. So I'll give you a demonstration. Steve hasn't submitted this. No work submitted. And that comment's posted in a moment. Let's go to Steve's page. This was for the most recent piece of work. I think it was this one. Okay, student answers. And it says no work submitted. Okay, so no work has been returned, but he's still got that there.
Lyman has asked, self-marking quizzes and partially editable templates.
Partially editable templates. I don't think you can select ranges for protection in Google Docs. For Google Slides, it's possible, I think, to select certain slides which are editable only, but I'm not 100% on that one. Self-marking quizzes, I'm not sure how that would work, I suppose. I think if you release the answer key to them afterwards, when you do the quiz, you can say release score and include the correct answers and the incorrect answers. Let's go back into the teacher page. We had assignment number 6 was a quiz. That's the wrong one. Let's go back here. Okay, it was not posted actually. Okay, let's have a quick look. When you create a quiz assignment, the Google form opens. I think it is a setting that you can release the answer key with the see summary chart, no limit to response quizzes. They can see missed questions. Okay. No, it looks correct answers too. So if you see missed questions, correct answers, it's not actually giving you an option to self-grade. So you'd have to issue the answer key to them separately.
Okay. So also, we'll get a copy of all these questions as well. So if you don't get to answer any live, we can do them in that FAQ document that you were discussing.
Sure. Yep.
But there's 3 more. Do you want to move on, or do you want to hear what those are?
No, I can take them now. That's okay. Yep.
So Rima has asked, can the program do marking for my students?
Which program does she mean? The Google Forms or Classroom?
Not sure.
Okay.
We'll leave that one.
Okay.
Maybe Rima, you can clarify that. Saju has asked, can you export a grading system written in Excel to Google Classroom?
Yes, you could export from Google Classroom, and that's what I was going to show with the grading system next.
Cool.
You can export the one particular assignment to an Excel spreadsheet, or you can copy all the grades for the entire course, all topics, to a Google Sheet. That's what I'll be showing next. Is there one more question?
Rima was asking about Classroom. So can the program do marking for my students in Classroom?
Only if you're using quiz assignments. Could the grading be automatic? Otherwise, no.
And final one, when creating a quiz, is there an option where students have to place the answers in the correct order, e.g. placing the steps for a process in the right numerical order?
No, but with some workarounds, you could say, could you label the process in the correct order? So if you had images as your particular questions, I'm just going to be riffing a little bit here because I haven't done this one for a while. It's sort of like using checkboxes or multiple choice answers. You could say which sequence of letters or numbers shows the correct process for these images or something like that.
Yes.
Hopefully that would clear it up, but I could demonstrate it again, but that might take me off track a little bit.
You're question free. Go for it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Now, going back to what I was saying about my marking system, which I will say is certainly not original, but has been very effective this year. Everything is marked out of 5, and I'll show you why. It's because when I get to the markbook page, I can quickly see what's been turned in, and I can see, for example, that if I click on Steve as a student, I can see the marks he's been given, and I can see he's handed this work in. So I'm going to go to this particular work here, and I'm just going to make sure that he gets that particular work returned. This was the ungraded one. There is no comment because I'm just going to breeze through this grading system quite quickly. Okay, Steve, I'm going to give Gary a 5, Jeff a 4, Lucy a 3. You can see what's happening is here that I'm grading from the marks page as well. And as I said before, if you're using a school account, this might actually be called the grades tab, but it's the exact same thing. And I'm not sure why Google has a different version for different enterprise accounts, but that's the way it is. Okay, assuming these students had all been completing this work and it had all been turned in, which we can see here, just give a bunch of random marks. Finally, I'm going to click on it and say return all. You could give the general feedback in that window there as well if you wanted to. You could say 5 marks was this, 4 marks was that, 3 marks was this, and so on. We can return all. Great work, everyone. Takes a moment, that disappears. Suddenly we get something that starts to look like a very complete markbook page. And realistically, if you've been doing one class for 2 weeks, you may have 5 separate pieces of work already so far that looks something like this. And it'll be my advice that if you create a marking system like this earlier, you're going to save yourself some time chasing back all this work in term 2 when reports roll around. You're going to have to be looking at something saying, okay, you look at your markbook and you know that Gary he did very well on the assessment task. He was very good at understanding what a geomorphic hazard was. And I'm going to look for areas that need improvement. Lucy got a 3 here. Otherwise, she's been really good. She had a 5 and a 4 and a 5. Over here, I gave her a little bit of feedback on tsunamis. So for my reporting, I might say something like Lucy needs to be developing her ways to explain how tsunamis form and the impact they can have, or the responses that governments have put in place to respond to tsunamis. So the idea is you're trying to create something that's consistent, that you can call on in the markbook page here as well, the gradebook page, that you can have some quick sign points about what's been done. And rather than having something out of 100, something out of 10, something out of 20, this is a really quick fire way where you can get some markers about how the students are really going. Of course, you can also click through to the assignments as well. So I'm going to click through to Samantha. This particular assignment here, I'm going to say, why did you get a 2? That was the very first thing we did, view submission. Okay, and this is Samantha's document. And assuming that she'd actually done a bit of work in this, I think I just graded it without. We can see here that she actually didn't even attempt the document. Okay, it's still there. So if I change...
Disappointed.
That's my daughter's name too, so I'm disappointed too. Sorry, Sammy. Return that. So she gets a 0, and I can see why I get the feedback for myself. When I return that feedback to her, what I'd always put in with it as well is I'd say that 0 marks. This probably wasn't attempted because you didn't see it. I'm big on formative assessment, so I'll always say to them, when you get this completed, sorry, this is disappearing out of the corner of the screen. When you get this completed, I'll happily, make sure you say happily, because it makes it seem less threatening, regrade this for you. Okay? And with that, the student has a chance to actually redo the work too. And this might be your style of teaching or not. You might say, well, if they do it late, they shouldn't be getting the marks. Well, my response to that would be that if they've done the work, they're getting marks based on the work, and your report comment would still reflect when the work was done and had it been done lately, or submitted late, I should say, not lately. So the marking system for 1 is about telling the students a 5 they know means excellent. A 5 is almost sort of like an extension grade for them. And 4 means they're getting exactly what they need to be doing. They're nailing it really, really well. 3, some feedback was given. Maybe next time they could think about how to apply that feedback. 2 would be actionable feedback. They should change the work and submit it again for grading. 1 was that it's incomplete, and 0 is that there was no attempt. So obviously if I'm seeing 0s, they're going to be a cause for concern if you see those too many times. Now, the next part of this grading system as well is when you're on this marks page, or any particular page for that matter, you can see that there is this little cogwheel, which we digital literate people should know means settings. We've got the class name at the top. We're going to scroll all the way down to the part below the class code. Classwork on the stream, I'm going to come back to in a moment. We want to show the students total points. Okay. Now, by showing them the total points, every time they get a 5, it's showing them 100%. If they got 5, 5, 5 out of 5 every time, this is going to be showing a 100% for the particular student. We want to show this mark to the students as well, because I think that that sort of reminder for them is pretty useful. And my students, even though you don't want to think they respond only to marks, it's more about the feedback that goes with it. So that's been quite good for them. So again, change to total points and show overall mark to students, click save and go back to the student page. And if we just go back to the Classwork tab, we're on Steve's page here, view the work, and should give us a percentage at the top for Steve. It should, I should say, that's happening in the background, hopefully. Wouldn't you know it, of course, hasn't happened yet. I'm going to check my page to make sure. Okay, it says total points and show marked students. Everything should be there. There we go, percentages at the top there now. So Steve, having done 3 tasks, and he's got one that he hasn't yet completed, this tick here means that it was ungraded. So you can still mix in some ungraded work with it too. 100%, 100%, and what's the maths here? 60% in total adds up to 86.67%. The work that's still set, that's due April 9th, which is next week, that doesn't go into the calculation here. And I do believe even if the due date passes and he hasn't actually submitted it, then that percentage won't be changed as well. But I'll need to confirm that for you, and I'm going to do that for the frequently asked questions too. So this is a really good marker, and I tell my students that anything above 80%, which means you're getting 4 out of 5 every time, which is perfect. You're not only achieving the outcomes, you're achieving them at a high level. 80% is kind of like the best you can do, and anything above 80 is exemplary. For students who are getting below 40%, I tell them that 40% is a cutoff where there's probably been too many 2s and too many 3s for us to be a little bit worried, and we need to do a little bit more to give you some assistance. Okay, so the grading system works like that. Make sure that in the settings that you've got total points on. For another time, you can also add categories, but we're not going to go into that today, and I think it's more trouble than it's worth. But I could put some links in the frequently asked questions later as well about what that would look like. Okay, the other thing that I'd like to show is when the students go to their main page on the stream, I'll just click through to the stream for everyone. You can see here all the classwork that I post gets posted to the stream, but you have to click on it to see what the classwork's actually about. The instructions don't actually get posted there. So on the teacher page, the settings page where we were before, creating the total points and so on, if you just scroll up a little bit, you can see it says show condensed notifications. Turn that to show attachments and details. I think that when you're not there in class with the kids, you might be using Zoom, you might be using Adobe Connect, you might be using whatever. It's just a lot easier for the students if you just get them to go to Google Classroom, and if you have the attachment showing on the very first page they see, there's less likelihood that they can lose exactly where the work is for the day. Okay, now we can see that because the attachments and the details are shown, we can see that every assignment that I've posted, including the instructions, are on the page there, okay? We've got a question here, explain how tsunamis are formed, and we've already got, this is Steve's page, Steve's already answered that. We can see all the classwork, we can see all the attachments, we can see all the instructions too. So the grading system, again, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. You might choose something different, but my advice would be get started on it early, because if you create a system that works from the start and the students know what to expect, you're going to save yourself a lot of work for reporting time later on. Okay, so that's the grading system. The last thing I'll show about the grading system for your own records, for writing reports, for entering the grades into centralised marking systems, Markbook with Central or something similar. We have a particular assessment here, this one, the physical environment. We're going to go back into that one. Okay, once we've clicked into the assignment itself, we've got a settings cog inside that assignment, which is different from the one out here, okay? So once we're in one of the assignments and we click on the assignment itself, we get a new cogwheel, the settings for the assignment. If we click on that, we have two options. We can download these grades as a CSV file, which is in Excel. We can download the entire course's worth of grades as CSV, or we can copy all marks to Google Sheet. What I'd like to do is, because I've given students private comments here, is to just download these marks as CSV. And it opens a new tab and it downloads down below here. Then we've got our Excel file downloaded. Give that a moment to open up. Okay. While that's opening as well, I'm just going to click on copy all marks to Google Sheets as well. Leave that to open in the new tab. Okay, looks like Excel's doing its thing. Okay, we can see here that we've got the student's surname. Every student was called surname: Gary, Jeff, Lucy, Sally, Samantha, Steve. We've got their email address, which is handy, I guess. We've got the marks in this column here that we gave them for that particular assignment. We can see, if I make that a little bit larger for you, I'm sorry if it's a little bit invisible. No, okay, there we go. And lastly, the really good thing about this is we can see that not only do we get the marks, but we also get the private comments. So this is the last column here. We get the private comments that we posted to those students. Okay, if I hit wrap text, we might make that a bit more legible. So this was the comment that I gave to the student. Now, because this was rather general feedback to all the students, it's not really very insightful. So let's have a quick look at Jeff. Jeff didn't actually do the work, but let's assume that Jeff did some of the work here. We could say, Jeff, this was outstanding work. Well done, mate. Okay, Jeff's going to go to his coursework page. He's going to click on his classwork for this one, I think it was, the physical environment, and should, in any moment, see the feedback that he got for the work. Didn't even turn it in. Presuming that he had turned it in, he still got the feedback. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Okay, if Jeff had replied to the teacher comment, said, thanks, sir, loved doing this task after all. Okay, that's going to come back through to the teacher. Problems. You can see that hasn't popped up yet. There we go. And the teacher posts back to Jeff. Okay, the reason why I'm showing this dialogue between the student and the teacher, what I'd dearly love is the conversation chain to be saved in this Excel spreadsheet, but it doesn't yet do that. So if you've done a dialogue back and forth, say you'd given feedback on how to get the work done, that was the first bit of feedback, and there was a few more questions, then there was a bit more feedback. If we go through the process again, download these marks as CSV, I'm just going to close that down. Okay, that looks like that's still the old one, I think. Okay, what we can see here is it cuts off every other comment. This was Jeff. I had that 3 comment chain there, but it only keeps the last comment that the teacher sent. So if you're doing lots of feedback with private comments and you're thinking that those comments will be saved and you can export them later on, at this stage you can't actually do it. So that's kind of one limitation of using private comments. Of course, you could always go straight back into Google Classroom and you can see the comments that you'd been posting there throughout that the course being completed. So the grading system works well. It can be exported to an Excel spreadsheet. The very last thing I want to show you with the grading system as well, whatever grading system you come up with, is if you are in any of the assignments, you can copy all marks to Google Sheets. Doesn't matter which assignment you choose. What that'll do is it'll export all of it to a Google Sheet for you. It's going to give you some interesting feedback as well. It's going to tell you all of the names of the different assignments you've done, the dates they were due, not issued, the marks that were available because I've created them all out of 5. This one's ungraded there. We can see what all the students got, and it gives us the percentage for each of the students as well.
Okay, we've got a question from Lyman. Can private comments be posted outside of tasks?
Good question. I think that you need to have a quiz or an assignment. I don't think you can do it for a material, so let's just test that theory. I'm going to go back to the first thing on the Classwork page, which was a material. going to go to view material, and there's no work assigned for the students here. So the only time you can use a private comment is with the quiz assignments, with a question, or with an assignment. But with materials, you can't do that. Okay, I'm getting to something that could be useful. Maybe I'll skip the next section for the moment and answer that question. There is a very useful way you can get in touch with the students. Let's go to the Classwork page. In fact, let's go to the people page. Okay. No, one more time. I'm going to go to the marks page. I'm going to try to find a student here that's not really pulling their weight. And it looks like my other daughter, Lucy, is not just really not pulling her weight here. So I'm going to click on Lucy. I can access her name and her page from the Markbook page, or I can do it from the people page too. But here we are with Lucy, and we can see here all her work, and I'm a bit concerned that the trend has been downwards for her marks. What I can do is click this little email button up the top here, and I can say, okay, let's include a student work summary. Hey, Lucy, I can see that your work has been completed, but some of the grades are slipping. How can I help? Okay, send that to her. You don't have to open email or anything like that. That's actually going to send an email to Lucy. I don't actually have an email address set up for Lucy, but what that does, and I can confirm this is working with the portal email address if you're a Department of Education teacher, that's actually connecting to your email address, and it sends from your portal email address too. So the replies are coming through, and I had a student reply to the email that I'd sent just the other day using this exact service, and it gave an attachment. It basically gave a screenshot of this page with links to the work, the message that I'd sent, and when she hit reply, it came through to me showing that entire piece of information as well. So you can't use private comments for absolutely everything for outside of work necessarily, but you can use the email feature, and you can access that by going to the person or the student themselves. See if we go to Samantha here. I could do the same thing for her. I don't have to include a student summary. I can say, did you attend class today? Don't have to leave Classroom to go to your email. You can send messages to the students that way too. Okay, so that's the marking system that I use. It's a system that I found to be pretty effective. It'll be good for reports. It's also consistent for the students. A mixture of numeric and non-numeric grading, which brings me on to my next point, which is how to use rubrics in Classroom too. Okay, it's quite easy to create a grading system, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. It takes a little bit more time to set up rubrics, but I suppose that you might be doing them for things like assignments. Okay, you can see with this assignment here, I've already created one. You can see rubric 6 criteria. So the 6 criteria for this rubric, and it's worth 30 points. Overall, I'm going to edit this assignment. I could make this assignment worth 5 points. And you can see there it's actually worth 5 points. Strangely though, the rubric is worth 30 points. And what the magic of this, what we're going to see in a moment, is that when I start marking student assignments, I'm going to look at Gary. Gary's been pretty quiet. This is what a rubric looks like. I'm going to show you how to create them in a moment too, but it's good to see what it actually looks like firstly. Assuming that Gary didn't actually have a mark yet, just going to change that to 0. Okay, this is his work. Let's assume this isn't a scaffold and this was Gary's complete work. I'm going to go through the rubric that I've already created, and I'm going to just move that out of the way. I'm going to say, okay, for the description of the, I can't even read it, it's a bit of a narrow panel there. Let's pop out the rubric so we can see it. Okay, description of the impacts of the disaster. Did he show the characteristics and features? Did he just some impacts of the disaster, general terms, and so on? It's a regular marking criteria. I can't click on any of these, but I can click on them back in this view. This was worth a high. Let's go to collapse that. The explanation, let's have a quick look at the explanation, was sound. Okay. And let's collapse that again. Let's go to the explanation of the, what else do we have? Explanation of the improvement and preparation for the response to the hazard was excellent, outstanding. What you can see here, the mark's updating at the moment. So far it's 2 out of 5 because I've given so far a 4 out of 5, a 3 out of 5, and a 5 out of 5. And what's it doing is adding up what that is worth. It's scaling to be out of 5. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate you don't need to expand these. You can just click on them. You can hover over them and it says we know that's outstanding, high, sound, basic, or limited. Okay, this one was a high. That was a an outstanding, and that's a 4 out of 5. And we can see that this got 4.17 out of 5. So you can use rubrics and they still don't override the grading system that I use, which is to make everything out of 5. If I return that to Gary, let's head back to the student tabs. That was the assignments. Let's go to the classwork page. It's the first time we've gone into Gary's. That's for the assignment itself. Let's view the assignments. And we can see that Gary gets the feedback from the rubrics that I've just sent through. I think I've left an error at the bottom of this one. This one shouldn't have been there, it's blank, so forget that one. But if he clicked on these, he could see exactly how he was scored for each particular area of assessment. And also he gets an overall grade, it was 25 out of 30, which scales back down to 4.17 out of 5. Okay, if he expands this one, he can see that one too. Now it looks like it's a lot to set up, and I suppose it could be if you do rubrics this detailed, but you'd only be doing these for assessments, which would be once every term. There is a way you can do something a little bit simpler than that, and I want to show you what to do. I think it was for this particular one. Maybe not that one, it might have been the physical environment. Here we go. I sometimes just create very basic classroom rubrics, which can be reused too. So classwork demonstrates an advanced understanding of the issues and concepts, demonstrates a strong understanding, demonstrates understanding, sketches in general terms. It either mentions some aspects relevant, or it's incomplete work, or it's not attempted. And if you see this particular rubric, this could be used again and again and again, and I'll show you why that's important in a moment.
Andrew,
okay,
just got a couple of questions coming through on email.
Yep.
Take you back. So,
sure.
Someone said, from when I try to email that way, I get a message saying no access, check with admin DET.
Okay.
Someone else said I'm DOE and get no access message to email when I try to email a student in classroom.
Okay, I think, could I confirm that it could be if you try to do it this way, and this is where you run into issues. I'm going to go to this is my Department of Education page, and I see that I've invited all my colleagues and they're having a bit of fun on the stream there. Anyhow, these are teachers, so they have the @education.newsouthwales.gov.au handle. If I tried to email a student, presuming that these were students in my class, and I selected email, it tries to open a new tab into Gmail, and that's when you're going to get the error. It's going to say, sorry, you don't have access to Gmail, which is true. But if you use the method that I'd showed, with what I've used so far, hang on a sec, so it takes you through to the portal, and it's going to say, sorry, that Gmail is not actually turned on for portal staff or for Department of Education staff. So you can't do it that way. I'll show you though that if I went into this particular student and said, could I email, what's happening, Fraser? That's sending, and this is connecting to my Department of Education account. You can see here. So your message has been sent. So make sure that if you're doing it, you're not actually using the email feature. You can't select the checkbox and go to Actions email. That won't work. You can't also do it for multiple students, unfortunately, too, which would be a real time saver.
So Tim's just asked, if you do it that way, is there a record kept somewhere?
No. Probably gets lost in the internet somewhere. If your students do reply, that's probably the only way you know that it's gone. So no, there's no way of tracking that at the moment, unfortunately. And I think there's a fight between Microsoft and Google about who runs the staff email. So we'll let them fight it out for our benefit.
Okay, one more. Can we import the rubric from Excel, Google Forms, or do I have to type directly into the rubric? Okay,
let's go to creating a rubric, okay? Because this is going to be something that you'd like to do from Google Sheets. The formatting for Google Sheets is quite specific, but again, I'm going to put a link in the frequently asked questions page with the template that you could use ongoing for that. It's quite easy to create them on the Classwork page. So I'm going to go back to the teacher page here, and we're going to create a very basic piece of work here. Number 8, new work. Doesn't have to be anything special. We're going to make it worth 5, and it's going to go to all students. Due date is next week. Okay, the topic is still landscapes and landforms. The rubric button down here, we give that a click, create rubric. Okay, we're going to make this a non-scoring rubric. So turn that slider off, and let's just call this knowledge. Okay, whatever the work was about, so the student put a description in, demonstrates knowledge and understanding of landscapes. Let's keep it nice and basic. Okay, the level title, this is the outstanding, exceeds, high, sound, basic, limited, and so on. So let's just call it a really basic one. Exceeds, above and beyond. Obviously, with more time, I could show you how to create more detailed ones. Create a new level. We could just create meets. Okay, we can create a new level. Okay, that's all it takes to get a rubric going. Okay, so for this particular work, if we've now created a rubric, we could assign that to the students. And if we go back to one of the student pages, let's have a look at Samantha, go to the Classwork tab. Could see now in a moment, hopefully, that's going to just refresh the page. With any luck, that should be right at the top there. Okay, new work. And we can see she looked at the rubric. That's still some work to do, does what's needed above and beyond. Okay, she can do the work. She can turn in whatever she's done. Mark it as done. Okay, thank you. Okay, back to the teacher page. And now we can grade Samantha's one. We can see she's the one handed in there. Go to the page. It's click on Samantha's work, expand her rubric. Still some work to do, does what's needed above and beyond. And this can be independent of the mark that you give as well. It's a 3-band rubric working towards meets, exceeds, but because the class works out of 5 and she got an exceeds, I'm going to say that's worth 5. So you can still mark independently with the grading system to having a rubric as well. So students might actually get the feedback about, if they got a 2 and they're down here, it might actually have a private comment saying exactly what they need to work on the vocab. Okay, so you could give a mark that's independent of the rubric grade you assign. Okay, so that's how you can create them in Google Classroom. Given that I've created 3 rubrics for this particular course now, the next thing you can do, having created 1 rubric, is to reuse that rubric in a future assignment. So let's go to the Classwork tab. We're going to create yet another piece of work. So we've got to go back to the teacher page. Okay, and didn't post that comment, it seems. Okay, going back to the Classwork page, we're going to create the 9th unit of work here. New work again, and we're going to make it worth 5. We're going to put a due date on of sometime in the future. It's in the same topic. We're going to use a rubric. This time, rather than creating a rubric, we're going to reuse a rubric. And that is going to give us the option of all the rubrics we've created here before. And I liked the rubric from this particular classwork. So select it. In fact, I'm not even sure that I like it. So let's preview it. That's right, I did like that one. This is just the preview. If you're happy with it, you can move on. If you're not happy with it, you can say select and edit. So let's select it. Okay. If you're not happy with it, you can right click over here, edit, and you can change the information here as needed. Is classwork 2 words, 1 word? My principal thinks that it's 2. So let's be consistent. And let's save those changes that we've made. So you get the option of editing the rubrics that you've created too, and you could assign that new work. Okay. Now, new work for the students. Let's go back to a student page. Sally's been doing not a great deal today, so let's go to the new assignment for her. She could see this new rubric when she clicks through to the assignments. And, okay, thank you. Thanks, Google. Okay, she can see that it's out of 5, and she gets insight into exactly what she needs to do as well to get the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or 0. Now, lastly, you've got the ability to export the rubrics as well as a teacher, which would mean that you can actually see what the template is like. I don't think that I have any rubrics ready. I think that I might have one. But I'll again go through for some new work. So work number 10, new work finally. Let's go to, it's worth 5. Due date is the future. Landscapes and landforms, rubric. We're going to import from Sheets this time. Now I should have one, I've done this earlier today, so it should work, but I'm going to show you it can be a little bit buggy. So you've got to be really, really clear on landscapes and landforms rubric. You can import from sheets and you can see it pre-populates it based on the Google Sheet that you've prepared. The error that I made before, I had one row at the bottom, which I needed to get rid of. So I don't want this here. I don't need anything for title. I'm going to get rid of that. So I'm going to delete this criterion. You can play with the order as well. I think structure should be higher up in the order. So move the criterion up and so on. You could move others around the page too. When you're happy with it, you can see now that I got rid of that one that was a mistake, the marks have dropped down to 25 and you can say save. Okay, this is ready to go. Finally click assign. Going back to the student page, time to look at Steve's work again. Okay, final work, again, marking with the rubric. So Steve can see that the rubric has these features and he knows exactly what he needs to do. Okay, so the template and the format for those is a little bit tricky, and rather than spend a bit of time with the time running out we have now, I'll leave that for the frequently asked questions, but it is a bit of a time saver. If you've got some rubrics in spreadsheet format, it's easy to copy and paste into Google Sheets and then to blend those into the format that's needed for the Google Classroom rubric style. Okay, so we've done numeric, non-numeric grading, a grading system, rubrics. The last thing we're going to talk about very briefly was Guardian summaries, and that's
okay. Can I grab you for a couple of questions before
absolutely.
you do that?
Yep,
so
sure.
Paul's asking, if I create a quiz in Google Classroom, can I copy it and post it into a second? For example, create it in 2020, but want to use it in 2021?
Absolutely. Yep. The only thing you'd need to be mindful of, and I'll go back to the teacher page. I don't think I created a quiz assignment. If you created a quiz assignment and you'd been collecting lots and lots of responses, you have two options. You had to be mindful of the way you collect the responses. So I would suggest rather than just collecting them in Google Forms, you can select a new response destination by opening all those responses into a Google Sheet. So you could cut off, you could sort the results by year group. So if students were doing a quiz in 2019, the timestamp would show 2019 and the time that was submitted. You get down to row 24, it might start as 2020. At least you could separate what groups of classes were taking the quiz at what particular time. The other option you could do is to make a copy of the quiz that you've got. So let's just have a quick look at how we do this. We'd go to make a copy. So with doing that, you create an exact same copy of the quiz, but you could issue one to one class in 1 year and another to another class the following year. Or if you teach the same class, you've got 2 commerce classes, 2 economics, 2 business, whatever it might be, you could have a quiz for one class and a quiz for another simply by copying the quiz.
Okay. Lyman's asking, can EXE files be shared from student to teacher and vice versa?
Good question. I don't know about the limitations on that, but again, I could probably put that in the frequently asked questions. I think a non-technology teacher, that's not come up for me before, but I can imagine that it would pose some issues probably sharing those. The way around it, I'm sure that you could use would be to upload it to Google Drive and send it as a link rather than a direct file attached to a classroom assignment. But if you did that, it probably restricts your ability to make a copy of that file for each student in Google Classroom.
Okay, and what format does the sheet need to take to import? Can we see a sample?
Yeah, sure thing, sure thing. Again, I borrowed this from Alice Keeler, there's a template available, and you can actually reverse engineer it as well. You can go through to one of the rubrics you've created on Classroom. So we did this one here, 1 criterion, 5 points. No, we did this one here. If I went into that rubric and said export to sheets, you can see what it looks like here. So I'll do that rather than bringing up a really, really busy one. Okay, view the sheet. Now that rubric export is completed. Come on, Google. Any day now. Okay, oh, don't click out of the tab. Okay, it looks rather ugly. So the first thing I normally do when I edit anything in spreadsheet format, and I'm sorry for those who are spreadsheet people, I'm certainly not. I know they're probably not meant for text, but select the columns and just move some of them to the side so you can see what's going on. Select all of the text in the columns by pressing Control A or Command A and wrapping text, just so you can see. Okay, so first piece of advice from Google is that you don't edit rubrics in spreadsheet format. Thanks, Google. These things come built in. You've got to leave those first two cells separate. Then we have, what was the criterion title? I think it was. Just to go back to just confirm. Knowledge was the title that we had. Let's just have both of those side by side. Criterion title goes in the third cell. Then we have the description, goes in the fourth cell. Then we have the areas, the band achievements as the columns B, C, and D. If you had further columns like this, you could make a whole range across the page and so on. And you could describe what those areas of assessment were like. How did you get exemplary? How do you get out of this world, and so on. Now, if you add new rows, I believe you've got to leave a space between this one and the next one. So presuming that you had the next one after this, it would look something like this, I think. For memory, you've got to leave a space between them, but I'll confirm that with the template that I have available later on after this webinar is concluded. Okay, we've got a little bit of time. Let's quickly, I'll just show you what the process is for Guardian summaries, and I'll show you also very quickly what a Guardian summary looks like. Okay, so I'm a Department of Education teacher, so I can see invite Guardians here. The reason I had to invite all my colleagues into a new class called Google Classroom Guardian Summaries was because in the free version of Google Classroom, you can see on the teacher page here that I don't get the option to do that. If I went to the people page, there's no option to invite Guardians. So you may or may not see this. It depends what school system you're working in. If you're a Department of Education teacher, you should see invite Guardians there. So going back to my department account, you can see all the teachers have signed up, and I would like to make myself the parent of Mr. Fraser. Okay, and I'm just going to invite the parent, which happens to be myself, to be the parent of Mr. Fraser. You could do this for all the teachers. There is no quick way of doing it, unfortunately, for all the parents, I should say, all the guardians. There's no quick way of bulk importing the parents. You just have to get a spreadsheet open, copy and paste the student names across. The one word of warning I'll say for doing guardian summaries is once Andrew O'Halloran, which is me, selects to be the guardian for Mr. Fraser, I will get all of the emails from all the Google classrooms that Mr. Fraser is enrolled in. So there is no opt-in from other classes. Other teachers don't have to set it up. If you happen to teach a student who has a Google Classroom in many of their other subjects, that'll automatically enroll their parents to get guardian summaries for that student across all of their Google Classrooms. So it's a bit of an issue that you might want to raise with your colleagues and to make sure that if you're doing it. That aside, what does a guardian summary look like? Well, it's an email that comes out daily, every second day, weekly or fortnightly. And I've got a sample here to show you what that actually looks like. Guardian summaries. I couldn't actually show you that without showing emails and all sorts of privacy concerns and so on. So what I've done is I've screenshotted what the process looks like for a parent who receives the guardian summaries, and then also an example of a guardian summary itself. Give me a moment, this computer's loading. And apologies if this looks a little bit faint. I'll try to zoom in for you so you can see it. Okay, so they'll get an email. It says you've invited to receive email summaries. You're signed in as, and that's me, so that's okay. I can accept that. The next step is that you say, how often do you want to receive these guardian summaries? And this was for the student. So even though this guy's my colleague, it said weekly. You can use the drop-down menu just here. And that could be daily, I think weekly or fortnightly as well. Then you have the option down below of changing the time zone. For some reason, it defaulted to Hobart, even though we're in Sydney. So I changed that to Sydney. Then finally, this is what it looked like as a summary. So I'm just going to scroll down here. Hopefully this works. Daily summary, I opted for daily summaries, and it said, during the next few days, this is some of the work that I had for my 10 philosophy and ethics classes. Had some activity announcements that I've been posting for philosophy and ethics. There was a group discussion document, just a regular email basically. And there was no link to click on there. There was no way that the parent actually finds their way into the Google Classroom. It's just sort of like a newsletter of what they've been doing. So it's been useful. It's been a good little kick up the bum for a few students, definitely, who know that their parents are part of Google Classroom and opting into the emails. There's nothing you can really do to stop the parents, or to make them, you can't force sign them up. They have to actually opt in for it.
Jesse's just asking if a colleague invites a guardian and they accept, will that be visible on my Google Classroom?
Yes, it should be. Yes. Because I've already signed Mr. Nessick up as a student in my classroom to test this. So he was a student in my 10 philosophy and ethics class, but he's actually a teacher at this school. I've made myself his parent, and you can see in this class that I just created this afternoon, it's already listed me as his parent. So you'll see the parent is already listed there if they've already been enrolled previously. The last thing that I would show with Guardian summaries, you can rely on your Guardian summaries and they're great, but that feature we showed before of emailing particular students or people, if I'm going to click on Mr. Nessick, I'm going to not only email him this time, I'm going to email the Guardians only, or I could email the students and the Guardians, and I can say, include a student work summary. Hey Phil, what gives to your work? Okay, that goes to the parents and also to the student, and that gets around that issue before that we had of the teachers not being able to use Gmail if you're a Department of Education teacher.
Okay, Tammy's got one question back on quizzes. Can you create quizzes and share them with other teachers?
You can. It's a little bit tricky, but you can say add collaborators is one way to do that. That makes them an editor of the same form. So the way I don't usually do that, because then you're going to have your responses for your class mixing in with the responses from other classes, and that's not ideal. So the idea is that you should probably say make a copy and give them that copy link. So you can just call it blank quiz, Mr. Teacher, whatever it would be, and then share that particular copy with them. You can just give them the link to this one.
I guess you could share the Google form or sheet that you used to import.
Yep, absolutely. The other thing you can do that's a really nice, tricky way of enforcing a copy, see at the very end of the address bar up here, it might be a little bit faint for you guys, I'm not too sure, it says edit hashtag responses. If I change that to copy and I share that link with someone, I'm just going to open a new tab, paste that link in the top. It forces the user to make a copy of the Google form. So you don't have to copy it for them. When they get this, they'll have to say, oh, okay, I'll make a copy of this. And then when they copy it, it's going to copy it to their own Google Drive. So the best way to share it with another teacher is probably by adding copy at the very end of the address bar and sharing that link to them.
Cool. Okay. We have run down all the questions. Is there anything else you want to add at all, Andrew? Or you've done an amazing job. You've got through a heck of a lot.
I had a bit of a run sheet. Maybe just one more thing, I suppose. You're a teacher and you're probably starting to collect a lot of work to your Google Classroom class. I'm just going to go back to my classroom, the demonstration. Sometimes you get files and you're not sure where they live or anything like that. So just make sure that you can always go to the Classwork page and you've got a class drive folder. What that'll do is that'll open up the folder to where all the files that are being submitted to you in Google Classroom, where they live in your Google Drive. And that can be useful, I suppose. And I'll give you one particular use case that might be apparent for a few people. If you've taught a Year 12 class and they've finished in 2019, for example, their accounts get deactivated by about April. So probably about now, all the 2019 students will lose access to their accounts. So if you teach a really great Year 12 class and you've got some great student work and the students own the documents that they've shared with you, there's a possibility that those documents just disappear. So you might have had a Google Doc that has lots of feedback, lots of great dialogue, lots of group collaborative projects that if you don't save, you could potentially lose at the end of once a Year 12 finishes, and probably about April, I think they said it would be, April the following year, those accounts get wiped. So what I'd suggest is take note of where your classroom folder is. And you can do a couple of things with that. You can say select all, and you can download all the files that you have there and save them on your computer. That's one way that you can make sure that you don't lose all the excellent work that us teachers have been doing recently.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Andrew.
Okay.
We're going to wrap it up now. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Andrew. Once again, fantastic effort.
Thanks, Miles.
Until next time. Cheers.
Okay.
See you
everyone.
guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.